What is consciousness? The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question that has captivated human minds for centuries. Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. I am back again. I am pumped up once again. As you can see, I always seem to get pumped up on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock. You know why? Because I intended to. I created this show with Jesse Blaze, and it turned into this, and it was just amazing. And I realized that through the power of intention, I could invite people into my life. I can have amazing conversations with amazing people and connect the collective consciousness, one soul at a time, 10 souls at a time. Whoever's here watching, thank you for being here. I see Ninja Kitty's out there. What's up, Ninja Kitty? I see the Quiet Healer out there. What's happening? It's our happy place. It definitely is our happy place. And it is because we declared it to be so, right? We said, this is where we want to be. This is what we want to do. And it's amazing to have created something and be a part of it and continue to do it. It's like a commitment to myself, accountability to be here, and that has just resulted in Ninja Kitty being here every week, sharing it. At least I can count on her, and whoever else, like I said. And if you are here for the first time, welcome. If you're live, please chat. I learned something. I learned that if you chat in my chat, even in StreamYard on YouTube and Facebook is where it comes from, it raises me in the algorithm, and that will spread the message of the live stream of consciousness. So just chat. You can even type like BL, like blah, 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 and it'll help. So I know Ninja Kitty's always out there commenting. Thank you. And if you're watching the replay, make a comment, leave a comment. Tell me what you think of this show. All right, enough of the live stream of consciousness intro, and let's talk about what's happening today. It is June 29th. Holy moly, June is over. We are in summer, full stream, I guess. As I was saying in the last couple episodes, it seems like this year is flying by. I think I'm going to do another show that talks about conspiracy theories and things like that, because I feel like there's stuff going on. Whatever it is. I'm not saying anybody specific is doing it. I just feel like there's stuff going on. But anyway, I'm starting to babble. I'm excited. Tonight, I have a guest on my show. I think I've been talking about how the show is a mix of guests who I know intimately, or not intimately, but well, and people who I don't know. And it's just been such an amazing journey. So tonight is somebody who was recommended to me, by Frankie Scorpion, who is a friend we had on the Fool's Journey, and said, hey, you'll really like this guy. And I took a look at his website, and there were so many punches in the face of like, yeah, we have the same philosophy, life is this and that. And he what's the word I'm looking for? Not books himself. He promotes himself as a speaker, a life mensch, expert communicator. And I know what the word mensch means. I'm going to ask him to define it. But welcome to my show, the live stream of consciousness, Ace the speaker, Asaf Mengelgrein. What is happening?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Michael, thank you. What is happening? Amazing things are about to happen. That is for sure. Great intro, by the way.
Thank you.
And yeah, life mensch. I knew choosing that word that it would gloss over some people, but I thought that having that bit of intrigue and mystery was on point. Mm-hmm. So let me jump in and define that right away. Sure. In fact, I was going to run to my phone and like, let me see exactly what it was. But I mentioned someone, as I know, growing up being Jewish, someone who does good deeds. He's like a solid person. Mm-hmm. And he's always there to lean on. He's that reliable person in the family, in the village, in that network. That is a mensch, someone who does good onto others. Yes. You could call it a life coach, but it's deeper than that, I think. It's just someone who's through and through. He's a mensch.
It's an alignment. It's an authentic alignment, I think.
Yeah,
And you've defined it really well. I also grew up Jewish, so I knew that word right away, and you just don't see it very often, so that's why it stuck out.
correct.
And Ninja Kitty saying, "Welcome, speaker." I just want to make sure that my audience properly knows who you are. Ace the speaker. I guess that's why she's saying welcome, speaker, because it's like kind of like a
Yes.
nickname, right? Hey, speaker.
Thank you,
Speaker
Ninja
dude.
Kitty.
Asaf Mengelgrein. I love your name. ASAF. It's just so like again so unique. You don't really see it. That's an Israeli name, I'm imagining.
It is an Israeli name. Yes. Yes.
Awesome, very cool. So we were talking about the show and what we were going to talk about, and I said, who knows? It's just going to be great, right? Because
Right.
we're both here intentionally, but there is some live stream of consciousness business, I like to call it, that we do, just to warm up our brains and kind of get on that same frequency, and that is to ask the simple question, the complex question, the eternal question. What is consciousness?
That's a great question. I would say, in my humble understanding of all of this greatness, that consciousness is that fabric that is everywhere, exists everywhere throughout the universe, throughout probably other dimensions. And it is that substrate which binds everything. I think that is consciousness. I think we humans in these biological bodies can tune into a small spectrum of that greater thing. That is how we interpret what consciousness is, but it really is that huge thing that is really everything, and maybe even God resides in that thread of everything and consciousness. I think that's my best interpretation of it.
What an amazing interpretation. Again, the reason I love that question so much is because all the answers are right, and they all
Mm,
kind of add on to each other and create almost like a little consciousness itself, right, of what
yeah.
the definition is. But you used a word that I really love that I haven't heard before: substrate.
Mm,
That is such a really good word of, at least for me, how I envision what consciousness is. Like, the consciousness is the stuff that it exists, that everything exists in. Everything is floating in this substrate of
right.
consciousness. I love it. I love that word. Awesome.
Yeah.
See how awesome that is? Great. Well, we are off to a great start. Great things have already happened.
Yes.
So I know you mentioned that possibly even in other dimensions, you said,
Right.
and that cued me in that I can ask this next question, and that is, they don't really teach in school about other dimensions, you know what I mean? Maybe they teach a kind of mathematical definition of it, but they don't really go into it. It's not really discussed, normally, I think, in society, which is why I love this show. I think that's what I was going to say earlier. I remember, like, the intention of this show is to give anyone who wants to talk about that stuff a place to do it, and not feel like you're out of place. It's like the place to
A
do it.
safe zone.
We're tapping into the internet and that whole stream of consciousness of what's going on,
Yeah.
and we're just making it happen. But my question is, do you have a story or a moment that you can share that the light bulb went off and you said, wait a second, there's more to the
Mm,
world than just me here in this space, in this moment?
absolutely. It was 2015. That was when I hit my proverbial bottom. Through all of the things that happened in my life, and a lot of us hit our bottoms in a variety of ways, and that was the trigger to make a change. But it wasn't just me hitting the bottom. There was a specific moment and a specific afternoon in my living room, my friend Rich hanging out on the couch. It was maybe 5 or 6 p.m. And this is Florida, and it's summertime, so it's stormy clouds. And I'm looking outside my balcony window. I had a really nice loft at the time, and the sun is starting to set. You could see all the stormy clouds, and they're very puffy, and you could see the silver linings as the rays of sun are breaking through.
Nice.
And this ray of light just breaks through the cloud and comes right through my balcony window and just hits me in the face. And I had this epiphany. It was as if God was just coming right through. And this epiphany washed over me. And that's when I said, I'm going to become a speaker and start enlightening people of what I'm going through, because that was right at that time where I was at my lowest.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do a reset.
Mm-hmm.
I'll digress for a moment. I got into a lot of reading. One of
Mm-hmm.
the books that I read was The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in it, she said one of the regrets was, you have to stop living to the expectations of others. And that was when that big switch happened for me. When I hit that bottom, it was because everything that had been programmed in me finally broke down. You know, the software
Mm-hmm.
crashed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. This is software. It's a software mindset that we are programmed through our family, through schools and institutions. It didn't work for me. I crashed. I hit my bottom. Thought something wasn't working. And then one afternoon, this light comes through, and it all started to make sense that personal growth and development was where I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
That was that switch that made me decide to start living my life for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to say I'm 47 years old. I was born in 75 to my parents, but in 2015, I was born to myself.
Nice. Interesting. And I love the vivid memory of that moment that you have. That's really awesome and kind of, I think, critical. So what were you doing as far as self-help and all of those things previous to that? Anything, or you just decide that that's what you were going to dive into and learn about and become?
Surprisingly enough, nothing. I was not exposed to the concept really of personal growth and development.
Wow.
I had heard about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was always a concept out in left field.
Mm-hmm.
It was never anything I entertained. And later on, when I got into it, I really looked back at my life and thought to myself, wow, you know, what happened like during my high school years? Why didn't like some kick-ass motivational speaker show up and give a big speech and all of a sudden knock some sense into me? Because
Right.
I had so many regrets, and I just felt like I really missed and such a great opportunity
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, but that didn't happen. And but what I did was I just started reading.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching some YouTube ad came on. If you remember Ty Lopez, he kind of blew up some years back, and he had that famous video with hey, here in my garage, you know, with my Lamborghini. You know what's cooler than that? Knowledge. And then he shows all of his books, and that inspired me. Also the Lamborghini, let's face that. I love that. But that inspired me. And this was when everything was breaking down. So I had made a decision to just cut myself off from everything, because part of the transformation, the rebirth, was that you have to kind of cut everything else that was your life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of layers you got to get through, you know, and kind of peel off.
And it's a hard chop. It's a hard chop. So it's like going cold turkey.
Wow.
And then what that does is it creates a vacuum. And then that vacuum has to be filled in with something, or you're going to go senile.
Right.
And for me, that was books. So I just started reading a lot of self-help books, history books, science books, biographies. And I did that for a good solid year just to educate myself. But also in that process, divinity struck, because you know that when you take the real kind of action, the universe takes notice, and all of a sudden these opportunities come to you. Sure. And one of them was an opportunity for me to host open mics. And this was in my early transition stage, but divinity struck. It was by chance.
Open mics, music or comedy or
spoken word? It was mostly music. It was mostly music. It was this Hollywood, Florida. It was this really nice coffee shop called Atelier 3. Atelier is a French word for studio, I believe, art studio.
Okay.
And it was a very interesting spot, and they had really good talent there. And I had kind of goofed around because I play the guitar, I write music, and I talked about, hey, maybe I'll take the stage. And the guy behind the bar said, why don't you host it?
Right.
And I thought to myself, okay. So I did, and it was a huge success. I ended up hosting 5 of them back to back to back.
Nice.
And people would come to me thinking that this was my profession. And that's when I realized, like, oh, I can actually do something with this. I can get in front of a stage. I can communicate well. I can grab their attention, entertain them, make things fun. What if I incorporate my personal growth journey into my speaking abilities and enlighten the audience in that kind of way? So what do? I Google how to become a professional speaker, and in it, I found the Toastmasters Club, which is a great organization. If the audience doesn't know, it's been around for probably 80, 90 years now. It teaches effective communication and leadership skills.
Cool.
It's all over the world. There are clubs everywhere. I went to a meeting, signed up that day. Within a year, became its president and made it one of the nicest clubs around, and brought life and interesting things. I would bring stage lights and a rope light and create this imaginary stage to give people the experience that they're coming on stage. And I like the show. We talked a little earlier, my background also includes some production. So when I put things on, it has to be a production.
Sure.
I want the lights to look right. I want the music to be cued right. And I'd play AC/DC Back in Black when the Sergeant at Arms would introduce me. It was a lot of fun. And so I started doing that and honed my speaking skills.
Nice. And
started developing my message. And then, and this goes back to the high school thing, I wish I had a mentor. I thought that my misguided past, while I cannot go back in time and correct what happened with me, I can maybe change the lives of other students.
Sure. Through your story. Yeah.
And then I decided I'm going to be a youth speaker. Because they say the riches are in the niches. So I was like, that's going to be my niche. I find this online youth speaker university program, pay a couple $1,000s to join that program, and began developing my thing, which was Living Totality. Living Totality is my program. It's my take on this evergreen wisdom that's been around forever. I'm not inventing anything. I just package it in my stories and experiences. And Living Totality was born, which is based off the tenets of awareness, action, accountability. And then I started marketing it to the schools, the high schools, and it didn't work.
It didn't work, but I think that's brilliant. And I think, again, the whole, I guess, you don't know me, but through our little bit of talking, me, that the important thing is the intention there, right? That's so important. Like you had in mind what your intention was, you know what I mean? You were just trying to figure out how to manifest it, So
correct. And the one thing I've learned is, and this was very recently, where I was again at a very challenging time. A friend sends me a postcard, and then it says, if you can't control the winds, adjust your sail. And sometimes we need to do that. While we have an idea of where we're trying to go, the way we get there is if we do one of these. We got to zigzag. But in order to zigzag, you have to have some fluidity in how you pursue your thing, your passion project. And sometimes we get stuck on something because there's ego and, we're invested into it. But if we just let go a little bit and let the winds carry us to new waters, all of a sudden we discover that, hey, maybe this is the path. So the school thing didn't work out. Another lesson I had learned, a fundamental error, and I like to talk about how that's a big thing, fundamental errors. When you realize it, you need to stop right away and make a course correction, because no amount of effort will fix a fundamental error. And that was that one, my program is all about inspirational and bringing people up, but yet I was positioning it for the high school market, where really the hot topics there are the unpleasant things, the abuse and the bullying the violence and all of the negative school things that are going on. So here I am trying to pitch it to also the gatekeepers, who are not the actual audience, because you got to go through the administrators.
Right.
And that was a very tough sell. So I realized I made a fundamental error. And as much as I want to speak to the youth, which I really do, I think I learned that my message was just better suited for people more my age. Because as I would hone my speeches through the Toastmasters, more and more people came into contact with the message I was preaching. And I realized that de facto, I've been mentoring them, and they kind of became my pseudo clients, if you will. And then I thought to myself, oh, there's a lot of people my age and even older that need to hear this stuff. It's not just the kids. So I pivoted, and the rest is kind of history. But it's just, you have to learn to sometimes let go of the path that you think you're charging forward, and allow things to move you to the left or to the right, and then it'll certainly take some of the stress away.
Interesting. And it's interesting also because you say, hey, I wish I had this mentor in high school, right? And that's kind of, I think, where that intention comes from. You're like, man, I can be this thing that was missing in my life. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's such a, I think it is so important, and it's also interesting, and I'm trying to figure out how to present this. So I was at the deli today just getting lunch, and they have, at the deli they have the paper on the side, where all the stuff is. They have the newspaper, and it was the New York Post. And I usually stay away from that stuff. You know what I mean? I try to stay away from the media. And it says something about the broccoli mayor is instituting this mandatory 2 to 5 minutes worth of mindfulness in schools. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome. But then I look at the article and I see that they're putting it down. They're saying like, oh, this is this woke thing, and forcing, like, schools are for learning, and it's like they shouldn't be implementing. And it's like, wait a second, I mean? And again, I come from the spiritual community, so we all kind of know like how simple breath is, right? And how crucial breath is to just taking that moment of mindfulness, and how important that would be to kids. So I think it's a good thing that it's happening. I was just so kind of taken aback by the way it was being presented by the newspaper, like that it was not a good thing. I mean, like, anyway.
It's interesting that you say that, because that just adds credence to my experience. And it's so unfortunate that the education system is shunning this the enlightenment is really what it is. It's shunning enlightenment.
The simplest forms of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what that it was a fundamental error, right? You see, I just can't compute that. That's what it was. I could not overcome that, and it was just too big for me to challenge. So I had to pivot for my own sanity, and find other like-minded people that I could.
So I got a question for you. Are you still president of this organization?
No, I did 1 year of the Toastmasters, but I've still been with the organization for.
I'd love you to tell me more about it. I think maybe after we get off the air, I'd love to learn more about it. As we were talking beforehand as well, you saw that I just kind of fell into this, but it became such a comfortable place. It became so comfortable to talk to people and connect to people. I think for me, as I grew up, I really was not a very social person. I did not think highly of most of the people I met. You know what I mean? I was really discouraged by the level of what I saw was society, right? And then I think at one point I realized that part of the problem was the mindset, right? It wasn't the people, it was the mindset. It was expecting to encounter that all the time, and certainly I did. You know what I mean? The universe delivered that. But really, just again, the mindset of like, well, 95% of the people I meet have no clue and are idiots. To flipping the script and being, everybody's got something unique about them. They just haven't found it yet, and being more compassionate and just flipping the script, you know what I mean, made me more interested in meeting people like you know what I mean, and having conversations and just, connecting. I think that in itself, when you connect, especially as a speaker or a teacher. So I also taught for a little bit. And again, those moments, those actions of what you might see as giving of yourself, right, to try to help, also you get so much from it, right? I mean, I got so much
Right.
every time I taught a class. I got so much back from the students. I felt like that was I was growing, right? Each time I
Right.
was like, "Wow, I just experienced something that's going to help me make it a better experience next time for everybody involved." You know what I mean?
And,
So,
and you also get to fill up your karma tank. And
yeah.
that was something that I needed in my life, because
Mhm,
it was empty. In my, Ace version 1.0, there was no karma in there. I was empty
mhm,
inside.
mhm,
But when you give, especially without the expectation of return,
mhm,
it is very, very rewarding. The karmic value is there
mhm,
instantly,
mhm,
but it pays with interest.
mhm,
So, whether it's a day later, a week later, a month later, you notice that it comes back, in spades. And that's where the universe realizes it. And I
mhm,
truly not only believe, I know from firsthand experience that when you give and you teach others, and then when it comes from a place of just love and wanting to just share the light,
mhm, mhm.
the universe does get on board and give it's the wind in your sail is
Yeah,
what it
yeah, yeah,
becomes,
yeah. You were talking about that earlier. Yeah.
right? It is what it is. And I experienced that firsthand, and I shared videos about that. And it's a very special thing
Mhm,
to be able to enlighten others. And there's a great story that I read in a book. It was Kabbalist Rav Berg. He shares this story. He says, imagine you are in this large auditorium and it's very, very dark. Now it's full of people, but you really can't see more than a few feet away from yourself. But you're holding a candle. That is the light, right? Because
mhm,
otherwise there is darkness, right? And God
mhm,
said, let there be light, Genesis 1:3.
mhm,
Now, if you want to get from one part of the room to the other, you have to move very slowly because there's not very much illumination and you
mhm,
can bump into things or people. But as you slowly move around, you either come across some people that are also holding a candle, meaning they are enlightened, and
mhm,
together you both brighten the space even more.
mhm, mhm,
You
mhm,
also come across some people in life that don't have a lit candle, and you
mhm,
help them light theirs.
mhm,
And doing that, that is the act of teaching, right? And
mhm,
giving and enlightening others. Well, pretty
mhm,
soon, those that you have enlightened have gone on to enlighten others. And before you know it, you are in a large room that is lit.
mhm,
Now your world becomes visible to you. You
mhm,
can
mhm,
dart from one space to the other and not bump into anybody
mhm,
because now there's light. Now there
mhm.
is awareness. But it only happened
Love that.
because you shared that light. You
Mhm,
didn't hold
mhm,
it in.
mhm,
You
mhm.
can have the most powerful flashlight, but if you've got nothing to shine it on, it's
Right.
absolutely
It's
useless.
useless. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Absolutely.
love that. That's a great analogy. I love that story. And the quiet healer is out there saying the Toastmasters is great. So I definitely want to.
Yeah,
I wasn't
100%.
really aware. So here you go. I've already learned something. I've got something to research after this and grow into. I'm excited
Yes.
about that. Excellent. So you said you became a speaker. You started reading. Was there anything that specifically stuck out in it, like spiritually to you? I mean, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle. I mean, these people. I'm sure you encountered them along the way. Um,
The so my spiritual background, my religion, I'm Jewish,
mhm,
but I didn't come from a very religious family. We would do the Sabbath every now and then if there was family around,
mhm,
but I don't keep kosher. And
mhm, mhm,
Saturdays I'll drive. So I guess I'm Jew light, if you
mhm.
want to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
frame it like that.
Conservative, right? Not yeah,
Reform.
reform, right, right, right,
Reform, right? Reform. And although more lately, I've practiced my Judaism a little bit more, and I put on the tefillin in the morning.
Oh, nice. Dive in a little bit.
Six
Yeah.
days a week. I do
Mhm.
that. That's
Wow.
my part of my morning ritual of how I
Mhm,
get primed in the morning,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it's my connection to God.
mhm, mhm,
But a few years ago, a good friend of mine turned me on to the Kabbalah, and
mhm,
I started reading some books on that. And maybe your audience knows that the Kabbalah, it's not a religion.
mhm,
It's more spiritualism, and there was the other word, but it's
philosophy. I feel like
It's like a philosophy,
yeah,
it's an ideology almost, but it's
Mhm.
certainly not a religion, which I
Right.
think a lot of people think that it is.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And it is not. It's really the greater understanding of everything. And correct me if I'm wrong. The Zohar, which these are the texts of the Kabbalah,
Mhm.
predate the Bible. I believe is what
I
I was
I think I
educated.
believe you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is like, I mean, think about this. Before even that. So you want to get to the source code. The Kabbalah is kind of like source code.
Right.
And that's something I really appreciated. And that Kabbalist Rav Berg that I mentioned briefly,
Mm-hmm.
he wrote one book called Nanotechnology, the Mind and Consciousness, something like that. But it was nanotechnology,
Well.
and it's a very scientific book. He makes a lot of comparisons to science, and I have a science degree. I'm a man of science.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy science.
Mm-hmm.
I also understand the science has limitations. But
Mm-hmm.
to hear a Kabbalist talk about the ancient texts with modern day science and how the two go hand in hand, and one truly explains the other,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, wow, your mind is blown. Your mind is
Totally.
blown. And there's so that, if anything, the Kabbalah is something that I find very interesting, and that is a great tool for living well. Now, religion, Judaism, Catholicism, all of that, there's a lot of great benefit there. I think to believe in something greater and to
Mm-hmm.
try to be good is a good thing, whatever your religion is. But
Sure.
let's also be honest that religion is man-made's version of that greater thing.
Right.
And
Right.
every time you get man involved, things get a little screwed up and they
Right.
become biased and twisted and interest driven. So yeah, I'm definitely more spiritual, and mysticism was the word. I believe in that greater thing.
Right.
Religion is great; it has its limitations,
Right.
but as long as it's all coming from source, which is ultimately be good to others, be good to yourself,
Right.
and grow. The best takeaway from the Kabbalah is that our souls are in these bodies to make a correction.
Mm-hmm.
It begs the question, what kind of correction and
Mm-hmm.
why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently, other lives, we've been around, these souls have been around, and the purpose of us living in these human bodies, which are designed to be imperfect, is so we can have problems and learn to overcome. Learning to overcome is the act of ascension.
Right.
And the goal is you want to end your life on a higher floor than when you checked in. You're born, you check in on ground floor, reset. But when you go, aim for that penthouse, right?
Right.
You
Right.
want to
Right.
move your way up, and that's the act of ascension, and that is making the corrections.
Right.
And those of us that are into personal growth and development get that, because
Right.
we're trying to constantly be the better versions of ourselves.
Sure.
Um, a lot of
So
people.
let me ask you a question. What do you think of this? You I don't want to use the word triggered. That's not the right word, but you sparked a memory.
Solicited.
Elicited. You elicited. That's a good one. Just a thought. Earlier today, I saw a post on social media. Again, I'm very guilty of engaging sometimes when I really shouldn't,
Mhm.
and it's not even close to the way that most people do. Like it's just and
Sure.
it's usually involving a spiritual or something conversation. And I think it was just a simple thing like the difference between religion and spirituality. Like, well, what do you think that is? And there were so many great answers. But I said that religion has you looking outside of yourself for God, and spirituality has you looking inside of yourself.
Mm.
What do you think of that?
I think that's on the money.
Sweet.
Again, religion is man-made,
Mm-hmm.
so they are constantly trying to get you to buy into their program.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking outward,
Mm-hmm.
where spiritualism is always looking inward.
Yeah.
Personal growth and development is about inwardly improving oneself.
Right.
So I think that is very accurate, what you're
Cool.
saying. I've never framed it like that in
I
my mind.
appreciate that. Yeah, and again, that's what I love Thursday so much because I get to say all of these things, and not feel like I'm going too deep. And the truth of the matter is this: as much as I love these conversations, and I talk about spirituality and consciousness, and I talk about, the energy that you put out is the energy that comes back to you. I mean, I don't spend hours and hours going so deep into like what is the meaning of life and all of that. I know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is this right here. This is the meaning of life for me, right? And for you, it's that's the meaning of life, right? And I love the idea that I don't really have to do much, but I know that part of my existence is helping people understand that concept, right? Just by having this conversation, by having these conversations, somebody's going to stumble across this show with me and you and see a couple of words that make sense. So I just truly believe that. And I feel like both of us are doing a little bit of channeling right now, just talking to each other, just through that source.
The best definition I've come across to what is the purpose of life, that's a profound question, but it boils down to two words: joyful expansion. Joyful expansion. Expansion is the corrections and the growth, and joyful is find a way to do it where you are grateful. This is gratitude.
Right.
Have gratitude and have growth.
Right.
Joyful expansion. That I think is the purpose of life.
So, okay, interesting. So you're eliciting a response here. I think that there's an important thing that you need to define that, and what I mean by that is this: in seeking joyous enlightenment or joyous expansion, there are also certain results, right? So whatever it is that you're doing to get that, it's going to affect other things. Now I think the deeper question is that raising other people? Is it helping? Is it enlightening other people, or is it putting them down? You know what I mean? Because some people might not realize that they're looking for this joyous expansion, but they're kind of having this negative effect because it's not mindful of a collective experience. I don't even see, again, I don't even know what I'm saying. It's just kind of coming out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
what came to my mind is my brother. When I multiple times over the years have tried to share the light with him, he would get offended and be defensive. There are certainly a lot of people that we've heard, aren't ready to be unplugged from the matrix. I mean, that's the it's a good symbolic representation. And yeah, so I have come across quite a few people like that. Since we are givers and we're trying to share that light, not everybody's ready for it, but we givers could rest easy that we have done our part, but we must be careful because it is a slippery slope. Because as my mother used to tell me, a giver, well, you've got givers and takers, right? The taker will never get tired from taking, but the giver will tire from giving. You need to be careful. People like us, and I, like in my videos, I said, I'm tired. I'm tired because you put out video after video and you're giving. But you also got to nourish your own soul. You need to know where to draw that line. And then when you come across people that aren't ready to be unplugged, that's definitely a bit of a kick in the stomach, especially when sometimes you're running on fumes and you're running on faith. But not everybody's ready for it. And you know what? That's
so again, I feel like I'm loving having this conversation, and I'm almost feeling like I'm trying to, not debate. I don't know what the right word is, but I agree with you about probably most of your philosophies in life and approaches to life and ways that we treat other people, and the awareness of what that all means. And I agree with you in trying to enlighten other people and show them how simple it is to achieve certain levels of happiness which are kind of seem so difficult to most people, right? And there's certain levels of happiness that we've achieved that are, we know, are so simple to us, right? And like, man, we wish other people could achieve that. But how are we, and I have actually been asking myself that this question, how are you and I so sure that we're right? like I mean, I know we are,
Mm.
right? I know we are, because I just know. I just feel like I just know. But sometimes I question. I'm like, maybe, I mean, that's probably an effect of duality, right? Or some sort of, their duality exists in three-dimensional, the
Sure.
three-dimensional world. So on some level, that is, they are right in the way that they exist, I guess, for them. Like, so here's why I'm saying that, because I've had a very, very similar situation in which I had a friend who does podcasting, who I really admired. I loved what he was doing with his show. We became close. I was on his show a couple of times, this and that. But I started to realize that part of his shtick was cynicism, right? Being this real cynic about everything. And it was just a lot of the times he was talking about that. And one day I said, just very sarcastically and lightly to him, we had a great rapport. I said, "Oh, you're a little extra cynical today, right?" Like, just like that, and it triggered him, and he went off and he was like, "Fuck you, you're so self-righteous, you're positivity shit all the time." And he got really offended at me just saying things like, "Hey, if you put out good energy is going to come back, and if you put out bad energy is going to come back." Anyway, regardless, it just, it became a real situation. And for me, the lesson I had in that was I needed to let him be who he was. I needed to just be like, "Okay, man," and walk away. And like, I needed to decide I don't want anything to do with that. So I've got to, like you said, I had to erase him from my space. You know what I mean? I had to
Yeah.
say, "All right, you're not part of my space." But even though I hope one day he realizes and all of this, I'm like, maybe he's meant to exist in that cynicism, because that's his vibration. That's his frequency. I mean,
I would say absolutely that's where he's meant to be. And
right.
your interaction with him was also meant to be.
Mhm, mhm,
Maybe that particular day and that reaction was what you needed to do,
mhm.
so you could create that space, so you can
Right,
move on as well. But let me take a few steps back. You asked the question, how do we know if we are right?
right.
Uh, Bringing back the context, how do we know if we are right? Us
Yeah.
preaching this personal growth and development, right? That's the question.
Kinda, yeah.
I think it was the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. In the beginning, he talks about it was either Bonnie and Clyde or those historical famous bad guys, that ravaged the banks and murdered a lot of people. But when they were interviewed, or was it their journals or something like that, they spoke as if they were righteous.
Mhm,
So what it boils down to is that even people that do very bad things think that they are right.
mhm,
So how do we know if we are right? I guess everybody's right? Because otherwise they wouldn't do what they're doing. They
mhm,
wouldn't do it
mhm,
if they thought it
mhm.
was wrong. People always justify their actions because they think it's right in that moment.
Right.
How do I know that what I am doing is right? It feels right, and
Mhm,
when I face my maker, I'll deal with the consequences of my
mhm,
actions.
mhm, mhm.
Um, yeah,
I
I
love
don't
it.
think I
A
can.
great answer. That, again, that was just a weird bunch of thoughts that I had that I threw out at you, and you handled that awesomely. And I agree. Again, I guess we're of that same thing. That was my lesson, right? Like, hey, I can feel bad for the guy that he has to live in misery, but I also can know that that's his path, right? And
Right.
I can know that path, it intertwined with my path for a moment or so, and now maybe it will intertwine again later on down the road, and he'll come back and say, "Hey, you were right," or maybe I'll go to him and say, "You were right, man. I got to be more cynical," or something. I don't know. But
Eh,
I see
that may
Tim is
happen,
out there. What's up, Tim?
but what happened for a reason, is what I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you
Yeah,
100%.
happened for
And
a reason, and
yeah,
we should not let our ego get too involved and not take it too personal.
no,
Like they say, right? If you ask God for help with something, He gives you a problem. so you can learn how to overcome that problem. And that really is the help that you needed.
Right.
So it was a great thing that you experienced that bad
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And then through those experiences, you learn how to not really ask God for things, but just talk to him and let him, and he'll get it through the conversation.
Yeah, if we are practicing ascension, right? Otherwise we repeat the same mistake as before.
Right.
So that's the idea. It's these inconveniences, challenges, frustrations are thrown at you. How you respond will determine the next time around how you react to it.
Right.
The enlightened hopefully don't repeat the same thing twice.
Right.
They always figure it out. Living totality, I say it, the living totality, awareness, action, accountability, but it really goes round and round.
Yeah.
At first, the awareness was this guy all of a sudden like jumped at you, rah, 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 and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then the next thing for you was like, what am I going to do about this? What kind of action am I going to take? Well, you decided I'm going to, move this guy to a further orbit where he doesn't have a gravitational pull on my soul.
Right.
And then once you do that, you go into the accountability department.
Right.
6 weeks later, how did that work out for me? Did I make good use of this new space? That's the accountability. And when you ask yourself, hey, did this work or not work? That in essence being accountable, new awareness comes into light.
Sure.
Because when you ask new questions, you realize new answers. New answers is new awareness. And so the cycle repeats.
Yes.
The goal of living totality is with every revolution, you ought to strive for evolution. Otherwise, you are repeating the same patterns over and over. And we've all been
right. We want to go out one ring each time. We want to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. And I it's a couple of minutes delay. The Quiet Healer saying thank you for that reminder. I needed that. You're absolutely welcome. I wish I knew what you were. Sometimes the references in the chat are a little behind, but thank you for telling us.
For sure.
We reminded you of something.
That's what we're here for, right? To bring to light this evergreen wisdom that we all have heard. It's another little fable or story. I talk about it, like the law of 10 great jokes. I like to ask someone or an audience, have you in your whole life heard 10 great jokes? And they all raise their hand. Yeah, because we've all heard 10 great jokes in our life. And then I ask, can you recite those 10 jokes right now? Right. And it's like, dry. Nobody can. Of course. Yeah. How about 5 of the jokes? Can you recite 5 of them? No. 3? Right. No. 2? Maybe. And that's exactly the point. And here's a crazy thing. When you heard that great joke, I know that you made a mental note. I got to remember this one. Right. I'm going to remember this one, and I'm going to pull it out that one day at the party, and I'm going to be the life of the party.
Right.
But then that party rolls around, you didn't remember, and boom, it went by you. Well, you know what? The comment, thank you for reminding. We're just reminding people of the life's great advice, because it's the same thing. We hear this great advice often,
right?
But like that great joke, we don't truly retain it. And when that opportunity comes to utilize it, we don't have it front of mind to take advantage. Right. What you needed to do with that great joke is actually write it down when you heard it. You need to write it down. And then you need to go home and say, for the next week, I'm going to read this every night before I go to sleep. Right. So I can commit it to memory. Nobody does that, like other than comedians, but why not? You want to talk about being an effective communicator? Learn like 5 great jokes. You are going to be the life of the party. Right. But if you can remember life's great advice, your life could be the party.
Right.
But you got to write it down, and you got to commit it to memory.
And you got to read it, right? You wrote it down. You got to read it every once in a while and remember and be like, oh, because I think the thing for me is in ascension or whatever. I hate the terminology, spiritual journey.
Sure.
Life, right?
It's a little corny, but
it's life. It's life. It's all life, right? You hear these sayings that are so simple, right? About, again, the energy, what you give is what you get, simple things. And they're so abstract, but then once you start to, ascend a little bit, you start to, oh, of course it makes sense. And you get what it means. Right. But like you said, it's not always like at your fingertips, and you know,
Yeah.
we're human, so there are moments where we're like, oh, I forgot you give what you get, and I gave something I didn't want to give, you know.
Right.
And but then you look at yourself and you say, oh, at least I'm aware of it, and you ascend and you go out one more ring, and the next time you don't do that.
Correct.
So awesome. Tell me about what's going on with you, and you know what your speeches are like. No, what your appearances are like. You know, what do you how do you come out? What do you start with? Can you give us a little preview or some basic advice, or is that we got to pay for that?
That's a good question. Honestly, I am letting the winds take me
Mhm.
where the winds want me to go.
Okay.
So a few months ago, I kind of had had a burnout stage because I've been doing this for 7 years. And
Okay.
this isn't my main gig. I actually work in real estate. That's
Yeah, I
how
did want to talk about that too,
yeah,
but let's stay
that's
here.
right. That's what earns my life. It's a family
Mhm.
business. Been doing it a long time, and it
Mhm.
affords me the time to indulge in this world of personal growth and development, and then try to bring it on to others.
Mhm.
What I've been doing lately, however, is teaching kids effective communication. I developed a program called My Voice is My Story, and I
Awesome.
teach children between 10 and 14 years old how to effectively communicate and use their voice so they could get more of what they want.
I love it.
And this happened, again, divinity. It was a relationship that I had through the Toastmasters,
Mhm.
a lady that I mentored 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And she was the shyest, most insecure person ever. And within a few months of speaking and mentoring, she came out of her shell. And fast forward a couple years, she leaves her counseling job to open up her own business,
Mhm.
teaching kids how to read and disabilities. And she basically turned into an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
So I'm having dinner with her a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, this was. And because part of my path is every 6 months to a year, I have to redefine my circle. I have to take the time to boot some people out so
Mhm.
I could bring some new people in. Well, so this was the person I brought in. She invites me for the Sabbath dinner with her family. They're religious.
Mhm.
And her sister was also a Toastmaster, and I've supported her in going to a play. So we've always helped each other, but we've been elevating our relationship. So we're having dinner, and I was expressing to her my frustration about the speaking thing and trying to do the keynotes. And it's
Mhm.
very challenging. And being a paid speaker is very challenging.
Mhm.
And she said, there's a great need in this Jewish community here for kids to speak because it's a very closed off community. And,
Mhm.
and this would be something that would be vital to their skill set, and the parents would really love it. I said, okay, sounds great. What are next steps? She said, why don't you put together a program and I'll put it out on the WhatsApp chat groups and we'll see what happens. I put together a little syllabus and agenda.
Mhm.
She posts it on the WhatsApp group. Overnight, we've already fully booked the next month of classes.
Awesome.
Just like that, I was like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
wow.
Amazing.
I had to do almost nothing for it. And then I look back at years and thousands of dollars of paying for ads and assistance and
Right.
marketing and
Right.
programs. And the ROI was zero,
Yeah.
zero. But the moment that you let the wind take you
I love
where
that.
there's a need,
Yeah.
all of a sudden things fall into place.
Yeah.
So lately, that is what I am doing with my quote unquote speaking career. I'm focusing on my expert communication abilities
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
training children how to be great communicators.
I love it.
That
Finally,
and
that's
that's
what you
my
said
joy.
you wanted to do. That's what you
Right? Isn't
originally,
that interesting? So
that's
I was thinking
amazing.
high school, but now it's
Yeah.
more like
No, it's
elementary,
amazing.
like
And it's
middle.
also interesting that you say that too, because I had an experience this week. I work at a studio, and we got a job to do a little promo video for this product that they use in schools. It's a little buzzer. You get 8 of them, and you can, if you're a teacher, you can do like a trivia game show, right? You can ask a question and they can buzz in the answer. And so we had 8 kids in the studio. We were filming all these different scenes of this stuff, and it just reminded me how much I love kids, you know,
Mm,
and
yeah.
also just I guess at this point in my life, also, being able to communicate, and having that calming presence that I was talking to you about earlier, it was just such a great experience. And I took control of this group of kids. Everybody introduced themselves. We played a game where you had to remember your name and the other person's name so that we
Right.
can work together for 5 hours. And it was so awesome. And it definitely made me feel like, man, I wish I could communicate with kids, because I do feel like uh there's a lot going on right now, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of people are handling it well. And I feel like the kids that I worked with were great, but I do see lots of kids out there stuck on their phones and just kind of
Right.
not engaging in life, you know what I mean, the way I would. And I'm like, maybe am I just a crotchety old man now, or what's going on? But it was great to connect with kids who were actually present. They were obviously
Yeah.
there. They were all like cast and came to do this thing. Now certainly it got a little rowdy. They were being social, but even that part of the experience allowed me to be like, okay, I know some things I can say to these kids next time that they will appreciate, trying to be actors and stuff, that will also make them behave, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just really awesome experience. I loved having it. And I'm really excited that you're finally getting to talk to kids. So has this been happening yet, or do
Yeah,
you
this is happening. So
how's it going?
we started doing this right at the end of the last school semester, and now, in fact, today I taught a class as well. But
Cool.
because of the summertime, a lot of these kids are at sleepaway camp.
Hmm.
So most of them are away. So I said, okay, we had a good month and change of sessions,
Hmm.
super great feedback.
Hmm.
Let's regroup when the next semester comes into play and try to make it more formal, and
Cool.
then try to expand and see where this goes. I'm excited about it. You've got those like cumin programs or mathnasium, these after
Hmm.
school enrichment programs.
Hmm. Hmm.
I can almost forecast where My Voice is My Story becomes some kind of after school enrichment program designed to teach children effective communication, because as
Awesome.
I know it now, nothing like that exists.
I love it. I love
And-
that vision. I mean, I love
yeah,
that's great. I mean, you could I just got a little bit of a chill, because there's
yeah,
so much like intention behind that, and really
yeah.
that's the key, man. You make stuff happen, make stuff happen. And it sounds like that's
Right.
what's happening.
And it's and today my dad, who doesn't take too much interest in this part of my life, and that's a whole other conversation. But he asked me, he said, "Hey, so how are your classes going?" I said, "No, they're going great." He said, "But you're not making a lot of money." I said, "Well, it's not a lot of money, but it is money." He said, "Yeah, well, again, we're coming from real estate where
Mhm, mhm.
you can't compare the numbers."
Sure.
He's like, "Well, do you do it for the money or because you love it?" I
Mhm,
told him, "Well, I both. I mean, I definitely love it, and it's nice to make a little bit of money."
mhm.
But this takes us back to a conversation we had before, and I told him, because he's always given me a hard time about my uh, alternative paths that I pursue. And as a serial entrepreneur, there's a long list of things I've done and haven't been a financial success. But with this one, as far as speaking and enlightening others, I told him, I said, "But wait a minute, Dad, you do a lot of good things for a lot of people, and you get nothing back for it, right?" He said,
Mhm,
"Yeah." He said, "Yeah, but God has been good to me. Look how well I've done in my other parts of my life." And I
mhm,
said, "Exactly." And that's why I do it,
mhm.
because while I'm not a financial success enlightening others and sharing messages of positivity, I get rewarded in other areas of my life.
Absolutely.
And that's a big one, because we can get very caught up in the analytics. How many views did I get? How many subs
Mhm.
did I get? I'm
Yeah.
tired already, because we feel like that's failing. But when you're doing God's work, I'm not going to compare myself to Moses, but as we know the story, for 40 years, he was dragging the Jews through the desert, and they
Right.
weren't being very kind to him.
Right.
So he had to eat a lot of crap, but he was
Mhm.
doing God's work.
Yeah.
So you, I, and others like us, we are doing the work of the greatness.
Mhm.
We are bringing light. Kabbalist Ravberg said this, rather than chase the light, we must find and identify the curtains that conceal the light that is always there.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that's what we do. We help people. We're not chasing the light.
Right.
Get that wrong. Get that, guys. We're not chasing the light. The light's everywhere.
Mhm.
We have blinders on. We need to identify those curtains so
Mhm.
we can then remove them.
Right.
And that's what you and I are in the business of
Right.
doing.
And I think that's really significant to the moment that we're in as far as the world around us. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's time to kind of lift the veil and get
Yes.
beyond the curtain. But
Right.
amazing. We're at an hour. It's not a very formal show. I don't like cut it off exactly, but I do want to be respectful of your time. I am curious though. I feel like you have a nice mix of kind of motivational philosophies and spiritual philosophies, but how much of it is how much of it would you say is metaphysical? Do you talk about kind of like metaphysical things much, or?
That's a great question. Something I learned early on in my Toastmaster career is that don't be smarter than your audience.
Mhm.
That doesn't, you think that's okay, but you kind of turn them off, because in the early days of that, I gave a speech about quantum theory, quantum mechanics, and the
Mhm.
double slit experiment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it went over the heads of a lot of people.
Mhm.
Uh,
Really?
I need to be in a safe zone to talk about those things.
Mhm.
There are
Mhm.
certain things I watched one of your videos, or I think you said in the introduction, you were talking about conspiracy theories.
Mhm. Mhm.
We can go down those rabbit holes.
Right. Right.
I love conspiracy theories because most
Mhm.
of them are conspiracies. They're actually
Mhm.
true.
Mhm.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Mhm.
But I don't speak a lot about these things because I don't think a lot of people are ready for it, or
Mhm.
they just don't have the foundation to
Right.
grasp it. Okay.
Right. Right. Right.
But every now and then, yeah, I do want to speak about it, and I do mention of certain experiments, and I try to make it in layman's terms
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
people can understand, because there is real modern day science
Mhm.
that backs up the wild things, such as the words that you use can affect material reality.
Mm.
The Rice experiment with Dr. Emoto, where the
Absolutely.
words which are backed by intentions spoken into jars of rice can actually affect the way they ferment or not.
Right.
How water molecules behave under pleasant music
Right.
or unpleasant music. How the double slit experiment shows that the very act of observation changes the result in real time. Not
Mhm.
only in real time, they actually do the double delayed something experiment,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
it actually changes before the input takes place. And that is mind boggling.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, how does it know before I actually did it? You want
Right.
to talk about consciousness and how
Right.
everything is woven,
Right.
not just through dimensions, but through time.
Right.
There is no beginning end, all of that. That stuff fascinates me.
Me too. I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to make sure you're around the right audience
Right.
for that. And
Well,
don't take time.
yeah, and even like I really try to keep this show to light, right? To bringing
Right.
light. So I try not to get into some of those conspiracy theory things, but I do believe that it's related. I believe we're living in a very, very significant time with all of the things that are going on in quantum physics, like you're talking about, how they're actually revealing the essence of being, you know what I mean,
Right.
and what is the nature of being, and really bringing it to question, right? Bringing in that question to light, because I don't think people even ask that question, and I feel like more and more people are starting to think about these things. And going back to conspiracy theories, the reason I don't really like to talk about them on this show is because there's a lot of fear surrounding them, and that energy of fear is not something I want to bring to the live stream of consciousness. It's not something I
Right.
feel like I want to contribute, you know what I mean?
Right.
So if I can find a way to talk about those things without that fear kind of factor, I think that'll probably be appealing to me in my approach if I could figure that out, because there's just so much, going on. I actually had an episode with Flat Earth Dave, who is a Flat Earth ambassador, let's call him that, right? And I had him on my show because I saw a bunch of clips, and people were just so mean to him, right? And I understood why they were being mean. I understood everything, but I was like, I really want to talk to this guy and find some common ground. You know what I mean? No pun intended. I wanted to know what his spiritual thoughts were, and he told me, he said, I believe that we have a soul that is eternal and that we're just here temporarily. He said some things that were kind of like, well, then why are you so adamant about flat earth or whatever? Like, my belief where I found the common ground with him is that things aren't what they seem. You know what I mean? And that's the simplicity of flat earth too, right? Is like, we've been told that the world is round, but in his perspective, the world is flat, and this is why. And just that, again, I think just the concept of bringing that up and saying this might be a possibility, and just opening up that conversation, I think that was what was important and cool to me to have that experience with him.
It's tricky. It's tricky bringing such conversations to light when they can be offending people,
right,
and triggering people.
Yeah,
that's part of the skill set of learning how to communicate, right? And bringing to light interesting points of view. I just like to have logical conversations. Is what it is. I don't care what your background is and what your beliefs are, but can you carry a logical conversation? Once logic kind of gets thrown out the window, then it starts becoming like a zero-sum game. You don't get anywhere with it. And as spiritual as I am, I'm a man of science as well, but I understand that the two sometimes are far apart from one another. Science is imperfect to humans because we don't fully understand it. We don't. Just like we can't prove certain things, we also cannot disprove them. So if you are a true scientist, there is no such thing as absolutes. You have to leave a room for what if.
Infinite possibilities.
Yeah, you leave. I mean, that's a true scientist. And some people are so dug into their beliefs for whatever reasons. I immediately have to discount them because that you cannot have an open mind if you're closed. That's just it. And if they're closed off and dug into their beliefs, maybe they belong on a different orbit, right? Not the orbits where
absolutely. Well said. Awesome. Well, Asaf, you've been amazing to talk to. I really appreciate you coming to the live stream and adding to this conversation, this growing pile of amazing things to talk about, and being vulnerable and talking about those things and feeling safe here. Thank you for feeling safe. I appreciate that.
100%.
Do you let's end this show on a good note. Do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement, uplifting words for my audience?
Yes, I do. Firstly, thank you, Michael, for having me on this show.
My pleasure.
This is a very good experience for me, for us, and for the audience. Every time I get to dive into awesomeness, it just feels right. The takeaway I would tell for everybody is that the only person you really need to impress is the person in the mirror. I want everybody to look in the mirror at the end of each day and ask that person, hey, did I live today well? Because you want to practice spiritual fitness. Meaning, are you in the good state of mind spiritually that if tonight is your last night, that you are ready to go. And the best check litmus test I have is the man in the mirror. So for everybody, check yourself in the mirror. And if the response is positive, then you've done well for yourself. And that's okay. And just continue to do that. Continue to impress the person in the mirror and try to level up, even if it's only 1% a day.
0.01%. Even that, because the compounding rule will do the rest. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Let me put you backstage for a minute. Don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you.
Thanks,
but
and thank you, audience.
Ninja Kitty, thanks so much, Ace.
Thanks, Ninja Kitty.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I'll have you back again when you got some cool program to talk about. That
look forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. All right, guys. So I know that I usually do my exhale right now, and I feel good about everything that just happened, but I want you to do it with me. All right. I don't usually do that. I don't usually invite you to do that with me. So let's do that together. Breathing is so important. And I was just, as we talked about in our conversation, bringing that to the kids, and just 2 minutes of breathing and noticing your breath. If you haven't done that, you would be amazed at what kind of peace it brings. Another amazing show, Mike. Thank you, Ninja Kitty. And that was because you were here too. So let's just do this together. I want you to breathe in through your nose. We're going to do it. We're going to do a 4 count. We're going to hold for a couple, and then we're going to breathe out. So breathe in, hold it. Breathe out through your mouth. We just did it. We just did another hour of the live stream of consciousness. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you're here for the first time, subscribe, check out some of the other episodes. We have some great conversations, and I appreciate you being here. I will talk to you guys next week, and let me run the outro.